Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Color Purple is a movie that I've never seen until recently. This one came out in 1985, directed by Steven Spielberg, based on the novel written by Alice Walker, screenplay by Menno, Meyjes. A movie that, for whatever, maybe I've seen it, maybe I saw it once as a kid, maybe. Not a movie that I owned growing up. Definitely not a movie that I could see being broadcast on TV. I would imagine there would be aspects of this film that would be cut out, because this is it's a tough movie. I'm going to say off the top, there are definitely going to be, I'm going to talk about things that are going to be difficult to listen to. So a bit of a trigger warning, I guess, for those that aren't familiar with The Color Purple or what is in the movie The Color Purple. I was a bit surprised. I had a bit of an idea of what it was going to be about, kind of tonally, but not really. Not really. And this tonally, very odd tone to this film, because it's a heavy film. But there are aspects of this film from the directing standpoint of Spielberg, but also from like the score of the film that really provides some contrast to what's going on most of the time in this story. It feels like on some level it has like this wacky type of family comedy vibe to it, but like the subject matter that it's mixed with, there's moments of like, you have this like wacky family 80s score and these like different set pieces within this movie that kind of feel like a family comedy from the 80s. But then like you have the serious nature of this film, like spousal abuse, indentured servitude, molestation, rape, child abuse. Like there are some heavy topics, heavy situations that happen in this movie. It starts off with these two girls. They're like 13, 14, these like young teenage preteen girls playing patty cake in these flower fields. Right? Very childlike, very innocent. And then come to find out, when one of the girls gets out of the flowers, you see that she's pregnant already, right? And this is back 1909 times. So this is like a glimpse into a little over 100 years ago. Not that long ago at all. Compared to, there's probably situations, 100% there's situations where there are young girls being impregnated. And who they're being impregnated by isn't like a good family wacky comedy kind of a premise. Let's just put it that way. They're treated like property. You also get to see Danny Glover, who is one of the main characters of this film, as a bad guy. One of the early Danny Glover films. Like, I knew Danny Glover primarily from Lethal Weapon. Obviously, these came before that, and his performance is good. It's just weird seeing Danny Glover, a guy that's portrayed like a wholesome family man, in cop that's gotten a little bit too old for this shit in the Lethal Weapon movies, to being just a horrible person, just a disgusting, which all men apparently were just all horrible, disgusting child predators back then. Including the father of these two kids, which, they don't really explain who impregnated this girl. Could easily have been her dad. But one day, Danny Glover's character strolls on by because he's got a crush on the non-pregnant girl. Obviously, the girl who's pregnant ends up giving birth. Danny Glover shows up after that event. But he's coming to, he's got dishes mounding up at his house. He's got kids that aren't, that are his, but there's no woman to take out. He needs an employee, basically. He needs a servant, which women back then were servants. There were, men married women to be their, like, to manage the household, basically. And he needs somebody to take after his kids that he had with somebody else. He needed somebody to do the dishes. He needed basically a mom to take care of him and the rest of his kids. And he has a crush on this young girl. But the dad's like, nah, I'm not going to give her up. She's too young. Whatever excuse he wanted to give to not give up the daughter that he probably had his eyes on. So he ends up selling, I think it was a purchase involved, Danny Glover getting the girl who's unclean because she had a baby. But, you know, Danny Glover, beggars can't be choosers in that moment. So just like an odd way, I mean, we haven't really heard the comedic kind of, like, so tonally it starts off kind of like, okay, this is a serious movie, which Spielberg's done serious movies before. So tonally it's like, okay, I'm in. But then there's some like there's moments in the score that like have these like uplifting, like comedic, like it's almost like a scene from Mrs. Doubtfire where he's like putting a meal together or something. That's like the music that's playing. Meanwhile, it's like an abusive husband who's married to an underage girl who's so abusive to her, but he's like frantic. It's like there's a scene where he's like getting ready to go out to meet this other woman that he's like been pining over, the woman that should have been his wife. And he's like forgetting everything, forgetting his shoes, forgetting his tie, forgetting his cufflinks. It's just like this comedic scene. And then there's this other comedic scene where she's actually in the house and he's going to make breakfast for her, something that he's never done in his entire life, clearly. And he ends up using gasoline because the oven's not heating up fast enough. Like really comedic set pieces in this movie about like child abuse and child rape and molestation and like indentured servitude, like one step away from slavery. So you have this character who ends up becoming Whoopi Goldberg, plays this character. Let me get the names of Celie Johnson. Celie? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's who Whoopi plays, and that's who Danny Glover goes to get. That's his wife. I don't know, quotes. It's his character. That's his home keeper. That's the person that keeps his home, cooks the food, takes care of the kids, even though she's a child herself. But then she grows up. I mean, it starts off in 2009, but then it jumps. I think we're seeing like a 40-year. The story spans 40 years. But then the sister runs away from the dad because the dad is constantly trying to rape his daughter. So she runs away to live with Celie. I don't know how to pronounce. I should have anyway, Whoopi Goldberg's character. And she becomes like a teacher. And this movie shows like how powerful education is and knowledge is. And it also shows why restricting people from getting education is a means of controlling people. It makes it so easy to control people when you control the information, which is why you see so many red states trying to limit education. They are doing everything they can to destroy education because stupid people become sheep, and sheep are easily led and easily controlled. And that's what they want. They don't want people thinking for themselves. They don't want people reading books and getting ideas that maybe taking care of the people that spend all the tax, that collect all the tax money, that pay all the tax money. That's not the billionaires that exist in the world. They're not contributing to the society. They get bailed out all the time. The people, the poor people and the middle class people that work, that this country is built off of, is also being wrung dry. So that billionaires can go to the moon, have little jaunts to the moon whenever or space, quote unquote space. outer orbit or outer atmosphere. I don't know if it's I don't know. Like the most anyway. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF, that stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out, browse the entire collection, and when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10%. As a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show. Education. Power of education, and she sees that. Like, she finally gets a role model, like a strong woman role model, which her sister is. Not only because she's intelligent, she's learned things. She's like teaches her how to read, teaches her words, she teaches her all these kinds of things that she never would have learned. Danny Glover's not going to take the time. Danny Glover's character's not going to take the time to teach her anything, because that's not what he wants. He wants her to cook the food, take care of the kids, and give them a nice shave. He wants her to be obedient to him. And education does nothing to help him out with that. So she's finally getting a taste of what it is to be educated, to learn, and she starts reading. And even the cover of the film is her like reading a book that, well, I think it's actually her reading letters, but you know, there's books that she ends up reading from her sister. And her sister, because she is a strong woman, fights off these men that are trying to rape her, where Danny Glover ends up being one of them. And she ends up getting thrown out because she stood up for herself. I didn't do that. And she's thrown out from the house. And now Celie's alone again. And she has to fall in line again. She doesn't have this outlet. But then there's another female presence in her life, played by Oprah, who's Sophia, who ends up kind of being another strong female character in her life, another strong like representation of like a strong woman in her life, where she's marrying one of the kids as they grew up. One of Danny Glover's kids, Harpo. He's marrying Oprah's character, Sophia. And Sophia doesn't take any shit. It's a matriarchal like family that she comes from, where the women run shit. And there's even this great scene in the movie where I think it was the wedding, where like you saw the women of the family just shut shit down when men try to get like overly crazy. And it's something that's Celie's never seen before. Oprah Winfrey's character has never seen. She's never been allowed to even like understand and see other people, that there's different ways to exist in this world, and that a strong woman could actually exist. So it's like this story of, and the sister, when she gets kicked out, she's like, I'm going to write you letters, I'm going to come back for you, whatever. But of course, Danny Glover controls the means of, he's the only one allowed to go to the mailbox. So he's not, she's basically kept out of the loop for most of her life, until one day somebody else that's in the house finds one of these letters from her sister. And then it's just like this wave of new information that comes into her life, where she's reading these stories about not only what happened to her sister, from her sister, but not only seeing what happened to her journey that she's been on, but also the kids that Celie had before she became Danny Glover's wife as a young child. Like, oh, your kids were adopted by this family who I end up work with and work for, and we went to Africa, and her kids grew up in Africa with her, like her sister, kind of growing up in Africa and doing all these great things in Africa and getting all this education. And this movie, like, for once allows Whoopi Goldberg's character to almost go on these mental vacations via these letters that she found from her sister that Danny Glover's character had kept away from her. And of course you're like, well, why doesn't she? There's these scenes where Danny Glover's demanding that she gives him a shave, right? And it's easy opportunity for her to kill him. But we see what happens. We see that the reality of what it's like in America at the time. That even, I mean, within the black communities, there's a hierarchy of men being complete assholes and bastards, which I'm sure is just as disgusting on the white side of the town as well. I'm sure a lot of similar things are there between those two aspects, but there's still the hierarchy of white supremacy and then black people as being considered less human or inhuman or 3/4 human or whatever it is that they use to describe their hate speech, their views, their hateful views of a different type of person. And you see that difference not only between men and women, but also between the races when Oprah's character, the strong woman who's never put up with anything from her husband, comes from a family of strong women, has a situation where a rich, or not even, I don't even know if she's rich, but just a white lady and a white dude want to, like, I forget what they want to do. They want to, like, take a ride in her car, or they want to do something. They just act like they own everything. That, like, if they want to do something, then they can just have it because they're white. And Oprah's character is not gonna put up with. Sophie doesn't put up with it. They call her a name or something. And she's like, hell no, and she ends up knocking the dude out. What happens is that she goes to jail, and then she goes to another jail, and instead of staying in jail, she ends up basically being an indentured servant, which is like a step above slavery. It's like unpaid servant, like you're like a they want her to be a nanny, and she's like, no. But now she's their nanny, and she's not getting paid to be your nanny. And the crazy part is that there's a scene 8 years later, so it's like another jump in time after this situation where Sophia, Oprah's character, knocks this dude out because she's not going to take this shit. Prison, indentured servitude. Now, it's been 8 years. She's been forcibly having to be the nanny for this family. And she's given 1 day on Christmas to spend with her children who she hasn't seen in 8 years. She is given 1 day. And the white woman drives her to go, like, she tried to teach her how to drive, right? Oprah's character tried to teach her how to drive. And she's going to go drive herself back home after dropping Oprah off to spend 1 day, Christmas Day, with her children that she hasn't seen in 8 years. And of course, what happens is the white woman doesn't know how to drive. And with all the dudes are outside trying to help her because she's clearly has no control over what she's doing, they're trying to help her get on her way. She acts like every woman. You still see it today. You still see this behavior today of white women acting like she is being attacked. Just because there's a black man trying to interact with her, she feels she's being attacked. She is like the original Karen. And she acts like she's being attacked Meanwhile, they're just trying to help her out, and she's throwing out claims, just like these Karens do, where they just, to control and manipulate a situation, will just fabricate a situation where they're the victim. Oh, she's being victimized by these men who are trying to help her drive because she clearly doesn't know how. And it's just disgusting. It's like, it's a movie that has so many heavy things, heavy aspects to it, emotionally heavy aspects to it. And yet there's these lighthearted, wacky comedy moments with like wacky comedy score moments within it, which is like a little off-putting, a little like makes it unbalanced on some level. And not that it's like 12 Years a Slave, constant depression type of stuff, but there are some heavy things. And it's a heavy movie. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. But she gets these letters, and she's able to, for the first time in her life, basically have a vacation from her life through these letters. And seeing where her sister went, that she never gave up on her, seeing that her kids are okay. But then there's, they're trying to get back into the U.S., but they can't because it's hard to prove that you're, a United States citizen as a black person coming from Africa. It's like you have to have somebody vouch for you, but there's nobody that's going to vouch for you. So there's like this small redeeming moment with Danny Glover's character, Albert, where the only good thing he does in this entire story is that he vouches for them so they can come to America. And there's this scene at the end where the two sisters are back together. She gets to see her kids. And at this point, Celie's character, Whoopi Goldberg's character, has left Danny Glover. She's like, I am done. Like, she moves, she finally gets an opportunity, and she gets the courage to finally break free from this guy. She's like, I am done. You deal with this shit. And she, like, that's why she didn't kill him. She could have killed him many times. But she saw what happened to Sophia. She saw what happened to Oprah Winfrey's character, that, like, if you do anything, you're screwed. You throwing your life away. You will be in prison, or you'll be indentured servant for the rest of your life if you kill this man. Despite what, it doesn't matter what he's done, because that's just not the way society. Women are like, it's like white men, white women, probably dogs, black men, black women. Kind of like that order of like what has more rights in the United States at that point. So she couldn't do it. And even there's a scene where she's about to do it. Like, there's a couple scenes where it's like you think she's going to do it, but she doesn't. And there's a scene where it's like, oh, she's going to do it. But the other woman shows up. There's another woman that helped her find the letters and whatnot, that stopped her from killing him, and was also her way out. Finally, so she finally leaves, and she does her own. She went on her own, and she became like she like just became self-sufficient. I mean, she already had the work ethic. She already could do so much. It was just no longer under the thumb of Danny Glover. So it's like definitely an interesting story. Definitely, like, it's a great story about like never giving up. Just like you never know what can happen in time, all things are possible. It's really amazing how what life works if you just just stay with it, because things can change dramatically in short periods of time, despite how little it seems things change ever. And also, I thought the age makeup was great. I think because they age up, because it takes place over 40 years. Danny Glover's a pretty young guy, and they make him look like he does today. And his performance was pretty on par for what it would be for like an old dude. So I appreciated that too. I mean, performances obviously are great. The only thing that's like I think it's more of the fact that this movie came out in the 80s is the score. There's some just kind of some comedic moments that just tonally just feel off. But I mean, there's a scene like they open a juke joint, right, where they can get together and have their thing. And there's a scene where like a woman gets hit in the face and she goes flying through the juke joint down through a trap door in the floor. Like a very cartoonish type of a scene. But it's like what happened was a woman got punched in the face. Like it's not a comedic scene, but it's played as a comedic scene. It's there's a few of those scenes like sprinkled in through this movie that are very, very weird. But I'm glad I watched the movie overall. I think part of this the tone issue is just the fact that it's an 80s movie, and then also probably a little bit that it's Spielberg. Even though he's done serious stuff, I think he definitely has a lot of heart to his movies, and I think he put a lot of that heart into this, but it skirts the line a few times of being like almost too much levity in a situation. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great movie. I'm glad I watched it finally. Obviously, great performance from Whoopi Goldberg. She's amazing. Oprah was great. Danny Glover, weird seeing him as a horrible person. But overall, I thought it was a really good movie. And check it out if you haven't seen it in a while. I highly recommend checking it out and notice those weird comedic things in a movie that's fairly dark. But anyway, that's it. The color of money. The Color Purple. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.